Hello and welcome to Mending Fences. I'm Karin Murphy, the producer of this very new show. We're here to help you to navigate through life's most tumultuous times: custody, divorce, separation, and we're even going to go over how you can settle matters out of court through the process of mediation. Your show hosts of this new and spectacular show are Al Hedayati and the Honorable Janine Barbera-Dalli. Al, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you hope to accomplish with this new show, Mending Fences.
Well, thank you for having us and starting this show and allowing Judge Barbera-Dalli and I to try to reach the community through television. What we did last summer is open up a new office, our third office in Southampton, for particularly the East End community.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure the community knows that we're here, and we're here to give them advice, whether legal or otherwise, being that Judge Barbera-Dalli has done different areas of law through her career, and she can certainly give some of the best advice that individuals can receive. Our goal is to educate people who are going through some of the most difficult times of their lives, that being separation, marital difficulties, or just difficulties with custody issues and, parenting time, child support, financial distress, and things of that nature. We always, and we'll get into it, I'll let the judge speak as well, but, we always recommend trying to work things out in a collaborative way so that you try to avoid the courts.
Yeah.
And it's not that the courts can't make the decision, it's that first and foremost, they're inundated with so many cases. And second of all, and more importantly, you shouldn't leave the decisions about your family to be left in the hand of a third party who is not the most familiar person. And judges will tell you that mostly on the first date of court, if you end up going in that direction. So what I'm doing, and the judge will say it as well, I'm just repeating what judges say. And
Right.
most of the judges in Suffolk County, most of the judges in Nassau County, and the rest of the state. That's been my experience. But we're happy to be here, and we just want to make sure that the community can use our services.
Oh, most definitely.
And we have free consultations for a reason. There's no strings attached, even if you just wanted to find out about your rights. And we'll get into it. I'm
Definitely.
gonna let the judge speak, because
I
there's
love
so
how
much to talk about.
I love how you say, let the judge speak. That's a different spin, I'm sure, for you, Honorable Janine Barbera-Dalli. But first, I just want to inform the viewers about really who you are. You're a father and a businessman. You're very passionate about the community. You're just such a generous and philanthropic man. But tell us a little bit about your background, if you could, so people really get to know who you are, the Al Hedayati that you are, and maybe what brought you into getting
Before
into...
we go to the judge?
Yeah, can we do it?
Yeah, it's gonna take a few minutes.
Well, you are, yeah, of course.
So I was in finance background, okay, and I was working at a firm in the city after law school. So before I worked in finance at JP Morgan Chase, before I even went to law school, and then went to law school. Then when I got out of law school, I worked at a corporate firm. I didn't feel accomplished, because dealing with was major financial transactions, but I won't go into the details. I didn't feel accomplished, and I didn't feel like I'm fulfilling. I wasn't passionate about it.
Wow.
And I had worked for a divorce and matrimonial attorney in California and some in New York. And I decided that perhaps that's the area that would fulfill me the most, because in many ways you feel like you're helping people.
Most
If
definitely.
they seek your advice and they listen. That's a challenge, but that challenge, it makes you feel good when you feel like you have a family that sticks together.
Right.
At the end of the day, just because two parents have decided that they're going to get separated or divorced, the children really have nothing to do with it. So I say this to all my clients. I actually, even though I represent you, my priority is your children. And unless there is some egregious conduct, I'm a big proponent of a 50-50 or shared parenting, so parents stop fighting over the kids.
Yeah.
Where who's going to pay support, it always becomes a financial decision when the kids don't want to be put in the middle of it.
Sure.
So I tell my clients, your kids are my priority, even though you're my client. And unless I see something that's so egregious, And there are examples, drug and alcohol addiction and other, extreme corporal punishment, things of that nature, or negligence by a parent, then, there's no reason why two parents shouldn't share the time if their work schedules allow them.
Well,
But
really quite refreshing, Al, to hear an attorney say, number one, right away, we suggest 50-50, and we try to settle these matters out of court. That's really extremely refreshing to hear from an attorney, because many times it feels that attorneys are just trying to keep you in court, keep you to be.
it's not easy to get my clients to agree to it, but at the end of the job, at the end of the day, it is my job to try to explain to them, look, I have clients that come in, their work schedule doesn't allow it, but they're trying to get more time just to get out of paying child support. Is that really what's in the best interest of the kids?
Right.
And I have to explain to my client, it's not the end of the world. You're gonna be there. For example, if the father is the non-custodial parent, guess what? You're gonna get the weekends. You're not taking the brunt of the work, so that you're gonna be happy. The kids are gonna be happy to see you. And the other parent has been with them all week, probably frustrated. They're not listening. You know what I mean?
Need a break,
It is
right?
not a bad thing. You just
Right.
have to pay a certain amount in child support. And look, I believe New York state laws are way behind from the other states in the United States.
Oh,
Other states
really?
usually start out with 50-50, so it's a legislator issue up in Albany. But I'm not there where I have the time to be in Albany and trying to advocate a position. I think most judges are now trying to push parties to do this.
Right.
But a judge ultimately, my understanding, and we have a judge right here,
Yeah.
is they have to if you go to court and if you leave it in the judge's hands, they're going to have to determine one parent to be the custodial and the other non-custodial, just to determine what the child support is gonna be.
Mhm.
But I see more and more judges in Nassau and Suffolk County especially, starting to push the clients, and unless there is a real reason, why don't the two of you agree to it? So that it leaves it out of my hands, basically, the judge who says all the time, that every judge that I've met with and have been before, they regularly say, don't let me make the decision because I'm a stranger in your family.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
they really want parties to work it out and put the kids' interest first and stop acting litigious, and we'll get into mediation and
Yeah.
how we try to resolve these issues outside of court all the time.
Yeah, definitely. We need to get into that, and I love where you're going with this. It certainly is refreshing. Let's get to the judge, as Al so affectionately calls you, the judge, and a lot of us do, because you've created really quite a name for yourself. But Janine, if we may, the Honorable Janine Barbera-Dalli, if you would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you aligned yourself with Al?
Well, I recently retired from the court system, as you're aware, and I practiced matrimonial law on my own private practice for 30 years before I was elected to the district court bench. So I do have some criminal background as well as matrimonial experience. And one of the challenges, actually, and I wanted to touch on what Al just said, that attorneys have is that we have clients coming to us that say, I just want the judge to hear my side of the story. The judge will side with me, I know it. And one of our biggest challenges is to explain to them, the judge does not want to hear from you. The judge wants you to decide what's best for your family. As a judge, I know, I would say the last thing I want to do is make decisions for people I don't know. And I would try to impart that to the defendants and the people and the litigants who would come before me. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have. The other thing is, like Al said, in many other states, mediation is the first step. You must attend mediation. I did a case once in California, and the judge didn't even want to hear from us, sent us right to a mediator, and then basically rubber stamped whatever the mediator's suggestion was. So we are very different than a lot of other states out there. And I think the mediation process becomes very important. We're moving in that direction. Now the courts do have some mediation sessions that many of the judges require that you attend at least one session. I know when I joined Al's firm as of counsel, one of the things I mentioned to him is that I really would like to do mediation completely. And he said, well, we always suggest it, so that would be great. And I think that mediation can work in 98% of the cases. The cases where they can't work are the cases where there is domestic violence or abuse. Then that becomes a problem, and you might have to go to the courts for intervention. But besides that, I think mediation in 98% of the cases can settle them.
So I don't know if this is a question that either you could really answer without the parameters or details of a case, but how come we hear of some cases that are in court for 5 and 10 years? I mean, it seems absolutely insane, especially with a law firm like yourself saying, let's sit down and go over this first, or suggesting mediation first. How come there are some cases in matrimonial court where we see them in for so long? What are the reasons that it would drag on?
It's really dependent. Each case is very fact specific.
Right.
You know, if it's a domestic violence issue, I have cases where it's been dragged out by opposing counsel because the father is not allowed to see the kids. So he has every interest to drag it out, even though he's not really putting that family in the interest of the kids. Look, kids get older, they're gonna blame one parent if one parent was the wrongdoer. And I always tell them, be careful what you wish for, because at the end of the day, kids are always gonna gravitate towards both parents. It's just a matter of time. So if you're being a bad actor and acting in bad faith as a parent, it's going to come back to haunt you, because those kids will have extreme resentment. I've seen it. I've been doing this now long enough to see it. See, the minute you turn 17 and 18 as a child and you become an adult, you're going to basically find out a little bit more about what may have transpired through your parents' separation or divorce. And one of the things I encourage people to do, even though there may not be a chance for them to win in court, is there's still a value to filing certain applications, just so in the future your kids know that you fought for them and put the facts in writing under the penalty of perjury. And if the time ever comes, because the lies never stop by one side or both, you just show them the papers, and I think that speaks volumes for an adult child. I'm talking about if they're in their 20s. I don't encourage it, but if someone has been so alienated from one parent, whether that's the mother or the father, you know, when that person hasn't been a wrongdoer, what is that person supposed to do? Not attend the child's wedding and important, you know, future events. And I've seen it be very effective, and then the children usually have extreme resentment from the parent that was partaking in the alienating conduct.
Interestingly enough, Al, you've touched on something for me personally, because I was alienated, I felt, but later learned that really, you know, my father really didn't fight for me. And it is true then. I do, you know, carry some resentment to that. So I think that's very important for your listeners to hear, that parents do push to see their children. It is, I think, very important.
Well, we always tell our clients, we can't guarantee an outcome.
Right.
And we're not the judges, we're just advocates for your side of the story. Sometimes we file applications where, and very rarely, because people don't always have the funds, right? It's about resources, it's about what's going on in a particular case. But if there's alienation, and you have to understand, the courts are listening to children way too much these days, which, again, something I'm totally against. But when kids are 12, 13, 14 years of age, courts are not going to interfere with their wishes. They're represented by AFCs, or attorney for the children, and they're there to represent exactly what the kids want. Guess what the kids want?
Right.
As little discipline as possible, as little structure as possible.
Right.
Their freedoms, they're teenagers.
Right.
And guess what? So they get away with that, but it's really the demise of families as we know it. Because
Right.
when parents cannot be parents at such young ages, like 12, 13, 14, when it's probably the most difficult years of parenting and going through the side effects of divorce, I see this being extremely problematic by listening to kids alone. Because, and look, the courts really, they put their hands up. What is the judge supposed to do?
Right.
The judge is supposed to go against the wishes of a child who says, no, I want to live with my mom, or I want to live with my dad. It's very difficult. It's not an easy task by judges. But that's where the courts are geared to making decisions in that way, because it's very hard to also tell a 12, 13, 14-year-old person who does it, they're gonna kick and scream and not
Right.
go, you know what I mean? It's not something that's within the control of the lawyers, the judges, or the courts. It really becomes a parenting issue, which if people act in good faith, they would encourage the relationship with the other parent, whether custodial or not custodial. Today's your
Sure.
mom's day, you're going to your mom's house. You're not gonna sit in the basement and play video games. I
Right.
mean, it's parenting more than anything else.
Yeah, most definitely.
And courts really enforce some parenting classes before, when there are custody issues, but there are a lot of issues.
Right.
And again, I don't like empowering children, because they always take the the place that they can party, stay up
Easy
all
rap.
night, not their homework. And guess what they're gonna be, how are they gonna be good members of society? I just don't see it happening.
Good point.
I have a little bit of another take on this. I found in the courts that the reason most of these perpetuate is because of money. I mean, the other things come into play, don't get me wrong, Al is absolutely right, but I think the root of it is money. It's because somebody doesn't want to pay child support, or somebody thinks they should get more child support, or somebody thinks there's a business and they should get more of that business. And they use all the other things in the marriage, like the children, unfortunately, to try to get ahead of the other person.
Right, sure.
So it all comes down to really to finances.
And when you have a client like that seems to be manipulating the system, Your Honor, do you advise them or stop it and advise them to
Absolutely.
not take that direction?
When I was representing women, I would say to them, I know that you say you were the custodial parent, you did everything, he worked a full-time job, but don't you think you need a break too? Isn't it
That's a very
time
great point.
that you,
That's how we encourage it,
Right.
that it's not easy being a parent five days a week.
7 days a week.
7 days a week on the other
Yeah.
week, so they have to just get this litigious mentality out of their minds,
And-
because it doesn't benefit you.
And I would basically say to them, it's a win-win situation for you. If your partner takes the children, we could go either way, husband or wife. If your partner is taking the children more, it's great for the kids. They have both parents that are involved in their lives, and it's great for you because you get a break. And if your partner doesn't take the kids, then you're nowhere worse off than you are now.
Right.
Your position is that, I want to keep them with me, I do everything with them. So what's the disadvantage of offering the 50%? And 50% is kind of like a weird number. 48%, 46%,
Yeah, because it
whatever.
never equals that.
No, it doesn't. And it depends on everybody's work schedule. Like Al said, if you're working, you can't have the kids. So, and this one's at home, so they'll have the kids. Or, you utilize babysitters. Everybody does.
Right. So, Your Honor, Janine, I just love to call you that
Yes.
because it really is really quite respectful of you and your career. And it's so wonderful that you're with the law firm and working with Al Hedayati. But I have to ask you a question. If one of the viewers is watching today and in a very acrimonious family court matter, can they decide to remove themselves from that and come to you in order to establish a mediation case? In other words, can you midway through a tumultuous divorce, start a mediation process?
Absolutely. Settlement can occur at any time during the divorce, right up until and even at the time of trial. We've done mediations because what you're doing is you're settling the case before allowing a judge to settle it for you. And no one is ever happy with the decision of a judge. Believe me, I know that firsthand. They're never happy with what a judge decides because the judge is not looking to make anybody happy. The judge is looking to end the case, get it off their calendar, and move on to the next case. As cold as that sounds, that's the reality. In the courthouse, we have standards and goals, which means that you have a certain amount of time to get rid of all the cases on your calendar. And you're called to task if those cases go on longer than they should. So a judge is there to move the case along. That's their goal. In mediation, we're there to try to get everybody to a settlement that everybody can live with. You
Right.
might not be thrilled with 100% of what you're getting, but at least you made the decision and not some stranger who doesn't know your children and who, as one judge says, I don't love your children, you love your children. You should decide for them, not me.
Now, what I love about this new show that you'll see weekly, Mending Fences with Al Hedayati and the Honorable Janine Barbera-Dalli, is that you're going to get the real deal. We're covering a wide variety of what your firm really encompasses today, but we're going to have real lawyers tell it to you like it is, like you've done today. So before we close with this show, we have a few minutes left, but I'd like to know from both of you some interesting aspects or maybe a situation that was maybe the hardest or something very different about a situation that you've encountered. Can
Can
you?
I just add something
Of
to
course.
I like to call the show actually the Judge Janine show, but
It really
they
is.
wouldn't, higher powers did not allow it, I don't know, maybe we still get there one day.
We should.
But my thing is, I just wanna really simplify it for the public. When someone comes to our firm, we have 3/4 options for a divorce. I make it like you're going to McDonald's and you're gonna order a meal. Because I try to simplify it and I always try to go with the first option. And the reason is every case should give it an attempt to resolve it amicably, whether that's mediation or uncontested. And we'll talk about the differences in the next show so that we can educate the public. But when they come in, there's one option is uncontested or mediated, which means you never need to go to court. The parties come in and we resolve it. We'll submit the paperwork. You never see a judge. Second option, unfortunately, if there are financial issues and you have to protect transfers of accounts, then you want to file as soon as possible and have that person served. So certain things called the automatic orders go into effect, right? Automatic orders stop parties from transferring money, accruing liens or encumbrances on property, and we go into that. The third option, which is 5% of the time, very little, it's domestic violence cases, and if we already know certain wrong acts are occurring, we want to file the divorce with an emergency application to put those facts in front of the judge immediately. So you'll be in court very quickly, within a week or two. The point is, I tried, that last option is 5% of the time. I try to do 3 out of 4 cases with the mediation and the uncontested, because if it doesn't work out, you can always go to the next level, and it's the most cost efficient for the people. So I give them these options because they know their lives best. They know what their husband or their wife is doing. They know if their accounts are in jeopardy. And the reason I give those options is because whether you make $10 million and you have $100 million in your account, or you're barely making ends meet, the numbers don't change. Our retainer amounts do not change.
Right.
So the reason I say it is so they're comfortable enough to share their finances with me, because the number won't change. There are
Right.
attorneys out there that if you tell them you have $1 million in your account, the retainer will be a much higher number. I'm not like that. The firm is not like that.
Right.
So the numbers are always the same.
Now, can you mix and match? Like, I'm going through the drive up for divorce that I say, number one, supersized, like, what do you say? So maybe we can explain this better. What does uncontested really mean?
Uncontested, first of all, mediation, when the judge is your mediator, it means she can't necessarily represent you filing the paperwork. She's going to be there to sit between the two spouses and really determine what they're entitled to and what they can have based on what they disclose to the judge as far as their assets and liabilities, right? When you come in and say, I want an uncontested, that means now you're hiring the firm to represent you. So we would be plaintiff's counsel if the other side has not yet filed. And now you're represented. Now the other spouses, and it really doesn't make a difference because I don't lie, cheat, or steal, or else there would be plenty of reports about me duping one party into signing an agreement. No, the two spouses come in together for just purposes of filing the paperwork. Then we do it as an uncontested, but it's very similar. That's why I say mediated / but sometimes people like the word mediation.
Mhm.
And I understand why, because they want to really keep the attorneys and the courts out of it, but it's fine. So we do the mediation and someone else will do the paperwork to submit it, because if you put the mediator hat on, I know some attorneys do it, we don't do that, then you can't really be the one that puts spin papers as far as I represent the plaintiff or I represent the defendant. But these are technicalities. The point is, we encourage it. We want 3 out of 4 cases, we start that way. And in the event it doesn't happen, you can always go to the next level. You said something funny about supersizing it or not. Sometimes we go with the second option, we file and we serve. And the reason I want the case to still be resolved, but I'm kind of worried about the finances. Let's say parties have a joint account with $20,000 in it, right? The banks, it's a joint account. The wife can go withdraw the entire $20,000 the next day. The husband can do that the minute he's served, right?
Right.
So I want to serve him to stop that. But the other thing you can do to protect that is just be fair and reasonable. If it was an account accrued, just take half of it, leave the other half for the other spouse, because the money could be gone. And then, we have a lot of situations where the parties are like, we don't have any more funds, these things happen. And again, it's very case specific. And I mean, it's really something that I think the judge agrees with, right? Did I say anything?
No, you just
No,
didn't
it's
leave
okay
me
to
any
disagree.
time to tell me my favorite story.
Oh, tell us your
No,
favorite
no,
story.
no,
We have a
no.
minute left.
I had a client come in to me, she was on the steps of foreclosure.
Okay.
Right? And everybody said, oh, you'll never get it. You'll never get it stopped. You'll never get it stopped. I did a very quick order to show cause. Everybody laughed at me. All the attorneys laughed at me when we got into court. I presented my case. The judge halted the foreclosure for 30 days to give her a chance to try to sell the house. There were prospective buyers right in the courtroom, sold the house. She went to Florida with 5 kids who were gonna get thrown out of the house.
Wow.
And everybody said, I can't believe you did that. That's
Great
my
That was
story.
great.
Great
It's a
story.
good way to end,
It's
right?
a great way to end. We thank you for joining us today, Al Hedayati and the Honorable
Thank you
Janine
for having me.
Barbera-Dalli.
Thanks for
It's
having
going
us.
to be a great show, Mending Fences, every single week, and you can also find the law firm in the Southampton location, very easily accessible. And every show we're going to be delving into grandparents' rights and family law matters, separation, custody, divorce, and of course, mediation, which we learned today is the number one thing that you recommend, which I love about you guys. Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
and
you for having me.
we look forward to this wonderful show every week on this channel.